So, okay, but in any case, you were miserable enough at this point. Well, obviously, then you'd be looking for what? Further alleviation of your psychological symptoms. And you said the binding was very uncomfortable and troublesome. And so so that also led you to conclude that it just might be simpler, all things considered, since you were already on the pathway to being a boy, just to go down the surgical route.
Yeah.
So you were 14 when that happened?
I was 15 at this time. I was in my sophomore year of high school.
You were
They
15.
also started to treat my depression. They decided to medicate me for it. And, you know, from what little I knew about medicating depression, I often heard that SSRIs have all these terrible side effects. So I asked that they put me on something with as few side effects as possible. And they decided to put me on Wellbutrin, which I didn't know until after I stopped taking it. But it actually has like a huge black box label warning on it for use in children and adolescents. And it actually made me feel more suicidal over time.
Okay. All right. So now you're 15 and you go see a specialist in relationship to surgery. How were you evaluated at that point? When you actually moved forward for the surgery?
I don't remember much of it, but it was, I mean, obviously they didn't really do an evaluation of my mental health. It was just like, oh, so you're transitioning, you identify as a boy and you've been on hormones for such and such amount of time. So I was eligible. And after my first appointment, the surgeon told me about a top surgery classroom that was taking place in the hospital building and encouraged me and my parents to attend it. And I went, and I learned basically the same things that I learned in the surgeon's office. About like the different types of incisions and how it benefits gender dysphoria. Basically, just propaganda. There are maybe about like 12 to 15 or so other families in there. I noticed right away that all the other kids in there looked to be either younger than me or like they hadn't even started on hormones yet. And I was shocked that they were already seeking surgery. But I didn't really question it much of the time. It was just like, I guess this is just normal, and I'm not the only one going through this.
The current administration's New Year's goals are to tax, spend, and turn a blind eye to inflation. If this is at odds with your goals, if you're tired of the government playing games with your savings and your retirement plans, then you need to get in touch with the experts at Birch Gold today. For over 5,000 years, gold has withstood inflation, geopolitical turmoil, and stock market crashes. With help from the experts at Birch Gold, you can own gold in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Birch Gold makes it easy to convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in precious metals. Just text Jordan to 989898 to claim your free info kit on gold and then talk to one of their precious metals specialists. Birch Gold will hold your hand through the entire process. Text Jordan to 989898 and protect yourself with gold today. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers, and countless 5-star reviews, you can trust Birch Gold to help protect your savings. Text Jordan to 989898 today.
Well, and you were already a long way down the road, and so I guess you checked off the boxes as far as the medical practitioners were concerned. But at that point, it's also, for you, it's going to be increasingly difficult to reverse your decision. You're already in a couple of years, and that's a long time when you're only 14. And so it was on to the next step. So that happened when you were 15. Yeah. And so what was the consequence of the double mastectomy for you? What's been the consequence?
By this point in time, I was 2 or 3 years on testosterone, and I'd been binding for roughly the same amount of time, and my breasts had lost their shape. They didn't look like they used to before. They didn't really have, they didn't, to me, it just looked strange, and I actually just started developing more insecurities with my body as I went through my transition. Like I had like these masculine features pop up, but it was all still on a female body, and there is like an incongruence between different features on my body, and especially my breasts. Like it was this masculine looking body with quite a bit of muscle, and yet these things were there, and they weren't really in the best shape, and it became a source of insecurity for me. And I thought that even if I wanted to, my chest would never be the same again, and so there was not really any point in keeping it. And before I went under the knife, they did tell me that I was going to lose my ability to breastfeed, but it was like, I'm going to be a man, and men don't do that. Like, I also wasn't really thinking about being a parent at all, because I was a kid. Actually, this is kind of reminiscent of the of one of the appointments for getting the testosterone. My endocrinologist asked me some questions that were very adult in nature. I was basically being sexualized by my doctors. It was like, are you aware that you may experience vaginal atrophy, or are you aware that this may affect your ability to have children as an adult? And I just went along with it. It was like, oh yeah, I know that. I don't plan on having kids, and I also I never had sex by that point, so I didn't know just what effect any of that would have on my body. But I was being treated as if I were an adult with the mental faculties to be able to consent to all of this and understand what I was consenting to. But I wasn't. I was just a kid.
Okay, and so what happened in the aftermath of the surgery? What was that like for you?
When I woke up and I was fully conscious, all the meds had worn off, and I realized what just happened. But I was actually quite happy. It was like, wow, this is a huge accomplishment. This is a huge step, and I can finally be myself. And I was looking forward to being healed and eventually being able to go out and swim and work out and just hang out without a shirt and look like all the other boys and not have to worry about wearing this uncomfortable, restrictive thing. And, it was an outpatient surgery. Got sent home pretty soon after that. And I had a comfy, I guess you'd say, a few weeks after that, because my mom had to take some time off work to just help me around the house. It was a major surgery in my upper body, and I lost a considerable amount of my range of motion. I couldn't even lift up my arms over my head until maybe about like 3 or 4 months afterward. So I wasn't really in a state to be going out on my own. But after about a week or so was when reality started to hit. I had to get my stitches taken out a few days afterward, and the sensation was just insane. Like, they had to cut and rearrange some nerve endings, so it was numb, but I could also feel everything that they were doing when they were taking out the stitches. And I was it felt so disgusting. And once I went home and I was able to finally bathe again, that was when I started having... That's when I had to take off the surgical binder and the dressings and look down at what was left of my chest. You know, I had these big scars and all these markings from a surgical marker, and on top of that, I will, just a warning, I will get into graphic detail here, but the type of incision that I got was called double incision with nipple. Grafts, meaning that they would not only take out the breast tissue and contour the chest to look more masculine, they would also remove like the way it was explained to me, I guess because I was young and they were trying to make it more digestible to a 15-year-old, was that they would leave like a deep scrapes on both sides of my chest, kind of like a deep knee scrape, but more controlled. And they would remove my nipples and then place them in that area of scraped skin in they called it a more masculine positioning and shape. It's barbaric, to say the least. And when I took the dressings off, when I looked down, the grafts were black because, you know, during the surgery, during the operation, the blood supply was cut off, and so the outer layer of skin had died. And they said that was how it was supposed to be, and that was just part of the process. But I couldn't bear to see that part of my body. I had to see that every night. I had to change my. That was what I had to look at every single night after every bath, after every shower.
What happened to you in relationship to sensation? Like because that's a long-term, physiological and sexual consequence. And so you lose the ability to breastfeed, obviously, and there's a profound physiological alteration in your appearance. But what happens to you on the sensation side? What has happened?
It's certainly not the same. It's gotten a lot better over the years. I mean, initially I would get like a lot of, it felt like sparks of electricity as like the nerve endings grew back, but it's strange. Like I can move like a hand over a certain area of my chest and it'll feel like it's in my arm or something. And I have basically no erogenous sensation in the grafts